All right, so I was just looking at that problem. So for something like that, you have the ability to do, and just type in chat to make sure you can hear me, because I'm pretty sure it's working. So for a problem like this one, okay, 2.3.4, let me bring it up. That's this one. Okay. So when you're doing the line, okay, you can use the line feature. Okay, so remember, if you hold down the control button, you can see that as I'm holding down control, it's bringing up the inspector on the screen, and you can see that I have the line. Thank you. Okay, so you can see that I have the line, and there's a bunch of dots, right? So that there's one that starts here, right, and then ends all the way over here, right? And so those are the kind of definition of the dotted line. And if you see in the inspector in the top right corner, it says dashes true, right? So you have the ability to define a line, and it says width one. Okay, and then we can also specify when we create a line that we want it to be a dashed line. So if you go, remember, to the docs up here, so I'm going to open up this so you can see that as well. Okay, in the docs, if I click on the line, I believe it was called line and arrow, right? Line and arrow, right? When I create a line, I'm going to do I have to do my starting value, starting location and ending location. Okay, I fill we can say is black. We're going to do line width to say it's one, and then this is the one that you're going to add. You can also add a parameter for dashes, and if you change that to true, that will make it a dotted line instead. Okay, and you can see that this, if I'm kind of like holding down on this, part of your function is going to be, since this is extending it, that you can see that this one starts, it looks like, at 85 125, or I guess 75 125, right? And then the next one below it is starting off at 75 175, so it looks like it increased by 50, right? 50 pixels down, right? And then another 50 pixels down, and then another 50. So you're going to, when you write your function for this one in the code, right, on mouse press, a part of making the paper longer is to make the paper 50 extra pixels, and then to draw the next line 50 pixels below that, right? So an additional one, right? So does that help you with drawing that perforation line? I don't know if that was your question about how to make the dotted line, or how to make the actual equation for generating that line. So let me know. Okay. And if anyone else has any other questions, if there's another exercise that you want me to kind of go through in a little bit more detail. Oh, okay, how to make the equation for that line. Okay, so what you can do for something like that. Okay, so let me pull up my code so I can kind of explain it without actually just telling you how to do it. Okay, so right up here, you're gonna have to make the paper variable. Okay, so I'll help you out with this one. So when you're creating the paper variable, okay, let's do this. I just want to see how it looks when I start. Okay, paper line width 100. Let me just pull this up. I'm just trying to see what it looks like on the screen before I come over and do it. Okay. Because I don't see, I already have the solution done, so I got to see how it looks when you guys get started. All right, so it's already got the paper roll, okay, and then we have to define the paper variable. The toilet paper is a line with a large length. Okay, so the toilet paper is a line with a large line width. Let me pull this up. I'm just trying to find it in the inspector itself. Oops, there we go. Ah, there we go. Okay, so here's my first question for you before I get to the actual dotted lines. Were you able to generate the actual paper first, or what did you, is it just about to get the dotted lines on there? Because it says to define the paper variable, and that's the first thing that I have on my screen here is the paper variable. Were you able to get that part going where it was moving the paper down? Okay, so let's just generate the paper first, right? So on my solution, you can see I just have the picture of the toilet paper, right? So for the actual paper, right, it's just going to be a big line, right? So it's going to start off at, if I'm looking at my code, 125 comma 100, which is 125. Oh, that's over here. 125. 100. Okay, so right in the center of this this paper right here. So 125 comma 100. Okay, and it's going to end at 125 comma 100. Okay, and its fill is equal to white. Okay, and the line width, it says to make it very large. Okay, so in this case 100. Okay, so I don't know if I was not able to get the paper. Okay, I was able to get the paper. I just need the dotted lines. Okay, so for the paper, I created this very wide line. Okay, that is starting at 125. Oops, starting at 125, 100. So it's basically a line that's in the middle here, but the width is 100, so it's going to cover the entire width of the current roll. Okay, let me see if I can get onto that. Because this one starts at 100. It starts at 80. See how it starts at 85 and goes to 185? So I selected a line width of 100 so that it'll go that entire width of this roll up top here, okay? Because those ones are also 100 pixels across, okay? So I started off with that, and then in the mouse press, we're going to do the perforation line that goes across the toilet paper, okay? And it says to use either Y1 or Y2 of the paper variable to help you. And that's what we're going to end up doing with these ones. So the Y1 and the Y2 are the 100s, right here. Okay, so the way that we're going to do something like that is if we say, and again, I'm not going to do the whole thing, but to kind of get you started on it is I'm going to say, let's create a line. This is going to be the perforation line, okay, and it's going to be, if we do paper.x2, okay, or paper.y2, that's going to be our way of saying whatever the paper variable is assigned to, right? Remember, this is, if I look at my documentation, x1, y1, x2, y2, right? So if I'm talking about x2, I'm talking about this number right here, right? So it's basically saying paper.x2, so it's saying 125, okay? And that's going to be the center of the paper. So we're going to want to go like 50 to the left of that to get the kind of like left edge, right? Because when we defined our line, we put it right in the center of the toilet paper, okay? So we're going to basically say, if I go to that center location, actually, let me see if I run my code if it comes up. Oh, I got an argument. Oh, that's because of this code. Let me take that out for a second. Okay, I want to see if my paper's going yet. Oh, I got to still do the paper. So to add the extra, let's add the extra piece of paper first. So to make the paper longer, all we're going to do is say, let's take the paper's Y2, right? Remember, Y2 is this one, right? We're basically drawing a line currently that's like straight across. We're going to say, let's lower that Y2 by an additional 50, right? So we're going to add plus equals 50, right? And now let's see what happens when I run it. Okay, so now if I click on it, you can see that it's getting longer by 50. This is really just one gigantic line that starts at this point and goes down to the end, right? So that's how I'm generating my paper, okay? And I got to take out the pass. We don't want that, right? Okay. And you can see that it generates the whole thing, right? I can run it again, and you can see that it goes all the way down, okay? So that's creating the actual paper, okay? To get the actual, like, the dotted line, what we're going to do is we're going to say, starting basically, like, whatever the current x2 is, we're going to go 50 to the left to start that line, okay? And then we're going to go 25 down, because that's going to be, 50 down. Y2 is this one. Okay, so let's just write out the code. I'm going to do this one with you because I have my answer, but I have to write it out so I can see what's happening. Okay, so for the paper, we're just saying whatever the current Y2 is, which is at 100 up right now, keep adding 50, adding 50, adding 50, and it's just making the end of the line down further, okay? And then for the dotted line, we're going to say, let's take the paper's X2 and subtract 50, okay? So again, that's basically going to say, okay, if I'm starting right here at 125, okay, it's going to move me over, okay, to here, right, to this the left edge, okay, to start my dotted line, okay, and the y value is going to be paper.y2 plus 25, okay, so that's going to make it so that my uh, paper or my dotted line goes down 25 units, okay, and then let's see what we want to do next. We want to do paper x2, paper.x2, okay, we want to add 50, right? So that'll take us to the right-hand edge of this paper, okay? And then we're going to do paper.y2. We're going to add 25 to that as well, and that's going to move the other end of the line down to that like y level, right? So it's going to continually move that dotted line, okay? So if we run this now, let's see what happens. Okay. So you can see that. Oh, what's happening? Oh, I got to click. Okay. I'm getting the line, but it's currently a solid line, right? So I'm kind of doing what I want to be doing. Okay. So it's giving me those lines that are 25 units long, right? Which, again, if you look at the solution, you can kind of see that this one starts at 75. I'm sorry, this one starts at 75, and then this one starts at, oh, it's going down by 50, right? So why is the X 25? 75, 125. Unless it's this line. Because this thing actually looks like it's... Oh, maybe this is a different... a slightly different solution, but it's doing the same thing. Right, so you can see how I'm generating that line. I don't know if that helps, okay? If I want to make it dotted, right, you can see, remember, we have more parameters that we can put in. I can also say line width equals 1, right? So that'll make it look a little skinnier. So now if I run it again, right, you can see that the line got, oh, it starts off at 1, but if I want to make it like thicker, I could make it a 2, okay? And then I can say dashes equals true, okay? And now if I run it, let's see what happens. Oop. Dashes with an E. Let me spell my dashes correctly. There we go. Okay, so there you go. Now I'm getting my dotted lines, okay? So the idea is that you have to, if your line is currently centered on like this point right here, right, there's your 125, 100, yeah, you're going to basically say, oh, okay, so that's why we're going down 25. If I'm at 125, 100, I want my first dotted line to be down here at the 75, 125. You can see that that difference is going to the left by 50 and going down by 25, and that starts my dotted line here, right, and then doing the same thing there, and then it'll keep generating new pieces of paper, right, to add another piece of toilet paper. Y2 is going to go down by 50, so that'll move it down to here, and then it'll do the same thing again, okay? So is there any questions about how we were able to do that, or is there anything else that we wanted to go over as far as any other exercises that you were unsure about? Or just general questions about like the topic, right? Right now, we're basically doing what was in Java called methods, right? They call them not methods here. They call them functions in Python, right? But it's the same basic idea where we have parameters and the parameters are doing something. Okay, you got it, Merrill. Okay, so no, the original line, the paper is it's a basically, if you take a look at the line right here, it's basically kind of like a dot. Okay, if I go to 125, 100, right, and then I want a line that is also 125, 100, I'm kind of saying the starting and ending locations are the same. I'm starting in the middle, okay, but because I set the line width to be 100, it is going across 100 in both directions, or I guess 50 in both directions for a total of 100 width. So these three dots right here are essentially like the line, right? And then as I down here do, let's take the Y2 value and add 50, right? That's making it so that the line goes down to here or goes down to here and continues down, right? So it's kind of almost like a rectangle. It starts off as like a straight line across of a rectangle, and then we're pulling the rectangle down, right? So that's the idea with that one. Okay. So it's essentially, it starts off as a horizontal line that becomes more of a rectangle. So. All right, so is there any other questions, any other exercises besides the 2.3.4 that we wanted to go over? So how are you guys feeling about this program? Because we're actually thinking about using this next year instead of doing the Java that we've been doing, which is very coding based, to move to something like this, which is a little bit more graphics based, and it's a little bit more interactive. To do something like this is probably a little bit more fun than, just typing code that calculates an average or something like that. So we're potentially going to pilot something like this next year as a part of the intro course. So hopefully it's something that uh, is a little bit more interesting than the Java code that we're doing now. Okay. And we're still working out grading and all. So your third marking period grades might be something similar to what you've already done. I'll grade just whatever you've submitted, but if you didn't get to something, I will probably just exempt you from that particular one because the third marking period is technically over next Friday. And then we're going to move to strictly doing these exercises. And I might unlock the tests that are on here and have you start doing those for the fourth marking period. Because it's sounding like we're probably going to be doing this until at least the week after spring break. We'll still be doing this online stuff, and then I guess they'll see. The inchworm one, is that a... oh, here it is, right here, 2.3.3. Okay. So what part of this did you have trouble with? So we're basically trying to get the inchworm to move across. Okay. So this is a... it looks like if I were to kind of summarize this one, when I click, there's like a down click that makes it move up. And then when I release, it goes back to the next thing, right? It's release, and it is flat again, but has moved forward. Okay. So clicking and holding the mouse down anywhere on the canvas and see that it just bends upward. Okay. And then when I let go, it comes down, but further down the screen. Okay. So they've given you all of the picture stuff, the sky, the grass, the bees. Okay. Define global variables for worm down and worm up. Worm up is when the worm bends upward, obviously, and worm down is when it lays flat. Okay. So do you have any specific questions? I don't know what parts you were able to accomplish on there, or if you just kind of didn't know where to get started with something like this. No, do you have any specific questions about this one, or is it just how to get started? All right, so I'm just going to start going through the worm down, worm up thing. Okay, so if you want to kind of see the kind of how to define this worm down, worm up, okay, here's essentially the idea. This is the starting position of the worm, right? So I'm looking at the solution, right? This is your setup when you're ready, and if I click on the solution, you can see that your one of your jobs is to draw the actual worm that's just starting. So that's going to be worm down, right? So if I click on, where'd it go? Where'd it go? Oh, here it is, worm down right here. Okay, so worm down, you can see start if I hold down my control button again, because that's how I'm viewing the inspector stuff. Okay, that you can see that there is a line that is purple. Oop, he moved. that is purple, right? Whatever it's called, medium violet red, and it starts off at 25,322 and ends at 75,322. So it's essentially 50 units wide, and it has a line width. You can see up top here, right? It has a line width of 6. So when I'm typing worm down, I'm essentially going to create a line that starts at 25,322 and then moves to 75,322, right? And that'll get me like the flat, worm as it is. And then if I click and hold, and then again, if I as I'm holding, click on the control button, right? Obviously when I let go, right, it gives me that. So I have to hold my mouse button down, and if I control, I can see that this is a 55. It's centered at 5533. I'm trying to see where it shows. It doesn't show. Oh, interesting. Color none, which I agree with. I know, color radius 20, roundness 86 points. So this is something that I don't see anywhere it being quite clear, but this is basically a star. And this is like one possibility is you can create a star that is at 55,333, radius 20, right? Border width obviously is still 6. So it's got all the same color information. And you can use the star to help you out, but since the grass is on top of it, some of the star will be covered up by, right? You can see it. You can't see it. I wish I could get rid of let me see if I can. If I get rid of the grass here. Hey. And this is something that is kind of a little tricky about this one. So if I get rid of the grass, okay, and I run it, okay, let's see what happens. Okay. Oh, I got to run theirs. Oh, I can't do it. This is my picture, right? But you can see that this space down here, if I were to draw this one, there's a star hiding down here, right? And again, if I hold down my control button, it doesn't show that it's a star, which is kind of annoying, but I guess the 6 points is how you'd figure that out. So you're basically going to do that, right? So that would get you the shape. And so it's switching back and forth. When your mouse is pressed down, it's turning it into a star, right? That's starting at that point, okay? So if we were to do this one, we're going to say, let me put my grass back, okay? Oops, I got out of it. Okay, so if I were to do for worm up, let's get rid of my grass. Okay, and I'm going to do worm down. So let's just kind of do this one too. All right, so for worm down, you can see it's at 20, a line that starts at 25,322. Okay, so we're going to type worm down is line starts at 25,322. Okay, and it ends at 75,322. Okay, and we said it was a fill medium violet red. Medium violet red, okay, and its line width was 6, okay, equals 6, okay, and so I'm creating this variable which is storing that line, okay, and then worm up, okay, this is the one that maybe was tricky. This is a star, okay, and if I click on this again, let's get this information real quick. If I hold down and hold down the control button, it's centered at 55,333. Okay, radius 20, border width 6, right? So if I go to my docs again, you can see that for star, okay, that's what the information that we need. We have to do, kind of all this center, radius, and then how many points the star is. Okay, so we'll put all that information in for the star, which is 55,333, and then it had a width, I'm sorry, a radius of 20, and it was a 6-point star. Okay. In addition, we're going to say that fill is equal to none. Okay, this one does not have a fill to it. It's not going to be filled in. It's just going to be like the border edge. Okay, the border is going to be equal to the same color, which is the medium violet red. Okay, and the border width is going to be 6. And the roundness, which I believe was also defined here, right? You can see it says roundness 80, okay? So I want to include that as well. So I'm going to say roundness. And that basically means that the points of the star are not entirely pointed. They're kind of like a little circular. Okay, so this is roundness equals 80. Okay. And then visible equals false. Okay. Okay. All right. So I put all that information in. And again, you can look at a little bit more detail about kind of what some of this stuff means. Okay. And this is the lesson 1.3.5 that goes over that. Right. So you can kind of mess around with that if you need to. Okay. So if I run this now, I don't know if I'm going to get anything yet because I don't have a function. Okay. Okay. So you can see that I'm getting the straight line, right? Worm down is currently visible. Okay. Worm up is there, but because I set visibility to false, you don't actually see it. It's hidden right now. Because when we go down to our mouse press, we're going to set the visibility to true, right? We're going to change that. Okay. So we've kind of defined the starting point for the worm when it's flat, and we've also drawn this one, but because we've set the visibility to false, you don't actually see it on our canvas right now. Okay, so that's the setup. Okay, and then for the worm up and worm down, we're going to say on mouse press. Okay, we essentially want to make the worm visible, right? So let's do this, right? So we'll get rid of our code. When we press the mouse, we want to make worm down, okay, right, which is where's that, right? That's the line. We want to make that visibility false, right? So we're going to say worm down, right, change its visibility, dot visible, which is the name of the parameter. We're going to set that to be false, okay? And then worm up, okay, we're going to set its visibility to be true, right? So that will essentially make this one go away, right? And then make the next one show up, right? So that's just going to basically do, let's see if it works, right? Right, so here's what that does, right? And that's it, right? We didn't define what happens on mouse release yet, so that caused it to go from flat to now it's showing the star, okay? And then if I do the same thing for the worm up part, I'm sorry, the mouse release part, okay, it asks us to do two things, which is again to change the visibility, right? So essentially it's going to be this, but backwards, right? We're going to make the worm down part visible again, right? The straight line part essentially is going to be visible. Okay, so this is going to be true, right? We want that to be visible, and we want the worm up to be not visible, okay? But then we also need to move the center of both of them over, right? So if we get rid of this little code here, we're going to say, in addition, take worm up, okay? I'm sorry, worm down, okay? And we're going to do center x plus equals 15, right? And I'll show you where this is coming from in a second, okay? And then I'm going to do the same thing with worm up. I'm going to move that one over as well so that the next time we see it, it will be with the other one. Center x equals, plus equals 15 as well. Okay, plus equals 15. Okay, so for something like this now, if I run my code, you can see, oh, worm up. What did I type wrong? Worm up dot visible equals false. Oh, unexpected indent. It didn't like my indent. Okay, so let's try that now. Yeah, Python is weird with its indentations, so you have to be careful about that. Okay, check real quick. Okay, so if I look at this one now, if I click on it, you can see that it's doing what it's supposed to be doing. Essentially, what's happening here is you can see that let's start with this. Okay, oops. If I look at my 25, right, and my 75, okay, those values, okay, if I click once, now it's at 40, right? So it went up by 15, right? And then my 75 went up to 90, which is also up by 15, right? So that's what's essentially happening, is that it's moving 15 pixels to the right, which is why I'm doing this plus equals 15, okay? So that's the idea with that. And again, like, the idea is that we're basically just making the straight line invisible, and then the part of the star is visible. And let's see if we can actually see. I'm going to hide the grass real quick. Okay, so if I hide the grass now, you might be able to see the entire star. Okay, and again, I think this was the tricky part about this one. So if I click on this, right, there it is. So you can see that it's actually an entire star that's happening every single time, right? But since we're covering everything but the top part of it with grass, you're not really seeing that. So That's the idea with that. Okay. So is there any other questions on any of the exercises um, so far besides, the two now that we've gone over? Okay. There's my grass back. Okay. Okay, and if there are no other questions, what I'm going to do is just put up my little marquee. Right? It'll be up, and I will be available for other questions for the next 30 minutes or so. So if you have any, just put them into chat. Any exercises that you want to go over, and I will be here to help you out. Right?